Hey guys, today we are going to be going over a Outriders video on how to build your own build. And I've actually learned a few things while recording this, or well, I guess I haven't recorded it yet, I'm recording it right now, but while preparing to record it, I've learned a few things myself, and so hopefully that'll be useful to you guys too. But what we're going to be trying today, what we're going to be trying for today is a melee build. And spoiler alert, it's not good. I don't think right now there is a viable way, at least for Pyromancer, to make a melee build that functions well. Maybe viable for other classes, specifically I'm thinking about Devastator. But just the way that Pyromancer's set up, it's really awkward. And so the first thing I want to talk about is Pyromancer's melee skill is a ignite skill. So obviously if we're going to build melee, we're going to want to go with the ignite tree. And as a result, the properties of the melee skill is it scales with anomaly power. So weapon damage does nothing for your melee skill. It's an ignite skill, so obviously you get all the ignite class buffs. We want to get those in the tree whenever we're picking those. I do not believe, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I do not believe that ignite cooldown reduction affects the melee skill. And so we're going to be ignoring those nodes in the tree. We do not care about cooldown reduction. It does scale with a burn because it does apply burn. It is an ignite skill. When you hit an enemy with the melee on Pyromancer, it will apply burn. And something else that I just noticed whenever we're thinking about the stats that we're going to be going for is originally whenever I was conceptualizing this build, I thought close range damage, since on the actual gear it just says close range damage. That is not what that actually is. What it actually is, if you look at the tooltip, is it's close range weapon damage. And so that only applies to your weapon damage, not your ability damage. So getting close range damage here does absolutely nothing for us. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull up a spreadsheet that I've been working on here whenever I was trying to kind of lay out the build. Since there's not really a built-in tool in the game for building a character right now, there's no like path of building or anything that you can use, I went ahead and just kind of laid everything out in my spreadsheet. So obviously here we go in our stat prio, we have anomaly power, skill leech, status power. Those are the ones that you're going to want to pick up. And instead of close range damage here, because close range damage doesn't work, you can have, we could add cooldown reduction here, just because cooldown reduction will scale with our other abilities. It doesn't really do anything for us since we don't really care about scaling our cooldowns here, but if we had no other stat and we had anomaly power and skill leech in our gear, then cooldown reduction would be acceptable if we don't have any gear with status power. It kind of will give us a boost because it'll help out with our buff and debuff uptime, but it's not going to do that much for you. So I would not worry too much about rolling any cooldown reduction gear. And so we'll take a look again at our skill page and how this differs from the caster Pyromancer build that we did. Technically it's still going to be mostly the same concepts. We're still going to be using lava shots for an anomaly power buff. We're still going to be using heat wave for enemy damage debuff, so that we can do more damage to them. The build is going to be less tanky because of the mods. I'll go over that in a second. Almost everything's the same here in the tree, except we don't have the cooldown reductions for ignite skills because we don't necessarily care about that as much. Whenever we're applying our burns, we're going to be doing that through the melee for the most part, and so we pick up the skill leech nodes instead of the cooldown reduction nodes here, and that's the only major difference between this and the other build. at least as far as that goes. For the mods, if I pull up the spreadsheet here real quick, we will have burnout, lava shots. Those are our buffs. We'll have martial arts for the 50% cooldown on the melee. We'll have untamed power, which all that is it's a mod that goes in your armor that does a 30% of your ability power as damage and a close proximity to you whenever you use a skill. The melee counts as a skill, and so untamed power is just free damage as you get there. Brawl will be a 100% buff to your melee damage that you're doing. Bullet kindling, self-explanatory. Enemies that are on fire take 20% more damage. Perseverance shield will be our only survivability mod that we have slotted for now. We do have a free mod, and I probably would recommend going Golem in the free mod slot, just because as I've been testing this build, it got completely fucking wrecked. Literally one shot whenever I was trying to test it. So I think having Golem here as a last filler mod, if you can manage that, I can't right now with how it's set up. And so whenever I actually do the gameplay for this, we'll see how I do. But I have my doubts that we're going to survive as much as we are on the other builds. Anomaly Echo will just give us a AP bonus every time we use a skill. The melee counts as a skill, so self-explanatory. Rejuvenation will give us 7k AP bonus whenever we heal, and a 40k armor bonus whenever we heal. And that will that's good for us because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe whenever I've been testing this, especially, it does count on leech values, and that's what I was reading on Reddit too. I haven't really gone too in depth on it, so I would definitely do your own homework whenever implementing this. If not, you could go with another survivability mod or some sort of anomaly power steroid or something. But for now, I'm using Rejuvenation because the 40k armor bonus is nice. If you are... No. If you're in close proximity to enemies that are attacking you. And then we have our free mod slot here, and that can pretty much be whatever you need to fill the gaps. It can be some sort of damage steroid. It can be a survivability thing. Up to you and how you feel the build's working out. In my experience, this build doesn't work, so I personally am going to tell you right now, I would not try to make a melee build in this game. I don't think melee is strong enough to really do anything. It has pretty good single target DPS. I will give it that. The single target DPS is not the worst in the game, but you're gonna need a group to clear content at any reasonable rate. And as you can see up here, these are the damage numbers I've calculated using the gear that I have, and the gear that I have is in green here. The melee will do about 160k on a fully debuffed boss. The burn damage will tick for 180k over time. Untamed power, every time you do a melee hit, it'll be 40k. And so a single melee hit from you to an enemy in total will do about 340k damage. A little bit more than that, but it's somewhere around there. And so yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at right now. And so if I show my gear now, I'm pretty much using the exact same setup that I had in my other gear. Obviously, This build also functions really well with the Akari set. I think the Akari set is pretty much a must-have on almost every Pyromancer caster build just because of how much anomaly power it gives you as a steroid. It doesn't matter which pieces you get. If you can get 3 pieces, the bonus that you'll get from the set is almost more than enough to make up for any anomaly power losses that you'll have in other places. So if you can get your hands on that, by all means do it. But if you can only manage like 2 pieces, then like my other build, you will be all right. You're not going to be top DPSing compared to anybody else, but you'll exist. Maybe. This build's a lot more rough than my other Firestorm build, so that's just my initial impression. I've only played it for like 5 or 10 minutes. It did not feel good. So I'm just kind of going into that with the expectation that it's not going to be good. But yeah, you can see our mods here. We've got Fire Tsunami Burnt Out. We've got Untamed Power, Perseverance Shield. We've got Brawl Rejuvenation. We've got Lava Shots, Bullet Kindling, and we've got Volcanic Armor and Martial Arts. Obviously, this is still the same boots I've always had. I still want to get rid of Volcanic Armor here, but I just can't until I get better boots that drop. So right now we're stuck with that. And you'll notice I do not have Golem here. That is a deliberate choice. Martial Arts is pretty much a must need for the build to function, just because that 50% cooldown is... you need it, to say the least, and I don't really have anywhere else I can slot Golem here. Like, and the helmet would be a good place to put it, but I'm using the helmet of the Akari, and I don't really need Fire Tsunami. I could change out for another helmet, but right now I just feel kind of stuck with it, so we're using it for now. I don't have another helmet in the bank right now that could replace this. And then for the weapon, I don't think there's any other weapon outside of Fortress that gives you a flat damage bonus. I think everything else is based on a shot. So Fortress is going to be the only mod in the game for the weapons that gives you a damage bonus. But we can use it here, and we have some pretty good synergy with it, not only because of the class passive that gives you armor whenever you use a skill, 45%, but you will also be using Rejuvenation every time you heal, and that should be every time you leech. Again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I do believe Rejuvenation procs on leech, and not just like a direct heal from a Techromancer. So that should function. I guess we can test that as we're going through. Like right now, we're not going to heal here, but normally our armor, since we will probably not be shooting our weapon for the most part through this run, will be around 90k, and so if Rejuvenation's working, then our armor will be above 90k, and our anomaly power will be above 170k. Because those all get the steroid whenever we activate a skill. And since we have 100% uptime on volcanic grounds, we should always have that up. But yeah, that's the idea behind that. Actually, right now we don't have our armor steroid, but we'll be using other skills too, so don't need to worry about that. But yeah, let's go ahead and get in. Oh, well, I guess I should probably talk a little bit about why those stats are important. So obviously, I think I have talked about all this before, but just to recap, the anomaly power scales your melee. If you read the tooltips, increases your melee damage. If you read the tooltips for the weapon, just the weapon damage. So none of that matters for doing a melee build. We have our skill damage bonus, obviously, which is a function of our anomaly power. We have our status power, which will increase our burn damage. We want as much of that as possible, even though we're going to be meleeing pretty quickly and we can't stack our burns. It's still just extra damage that we get for free, because we don't have any other sources of damage in this build that we can really go with outside of maybe adding cooldown reduction, but cooldown reduction is not really going to do much for you here. So since the melee is just a flat cooldown, I don't think cooldown reduction affects the melee skill. But I could be wrong there. I didn't really test it, but I did look in the game guide, and the game guide doesn't say anything about melee being affected by cooldown reduction. So I think in items and resources, the attributes, yeah. It says of skills, so it may function for the melee skill. I don't have enough cooldown reduction gear to test it. By all means, do your own testing, but even if it was viable to use cooldown reduction there, I'd still probably go for status power, because just the extra damage bonus that you get from the burn over time is well worth it. Because for most pack mobs, you're not going to be meleeing them more than once anyway, because the damage that you do from the initial melee will be more than enough to kill them. But yeah, let's get to testing. And then obviously skill leech, because you leech off your burn. So yeah, that one I hope is fairly obvious. But yeah, whenever you're thinking about doing your own build, you basically want to think about what your damage sources are going to be, how you can amplify them, and what your survivability is going to be and how you survive. And content like this, it doesn't really matter if you die, especially if you're in a group. You can have people revive you, so that's not super important. But if you're doing solo content, then you do really want to care about your survivability, because if you die, obviously you don't get rewards, and that's not good. Nobody wants to not get their rewards. So it's pretty easy for Outriders, because it's not that complex of a game. The skill tree is not super duper in depth. It does have depth to it, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be the most intense planning that you will be doing in your life. You're not going to have to go through your path to building tree for 3 hours just to figure out what gives you the best bang for your buck in terms of your damage output. I am a little worried here about dying to the Broodmother. I'm going to be straight up with you. As you can see, we healed a full there, but it did proc our Perseverance shield, and that's... Broodmother can absolutely 100% kill us here. So this may be a shorter run than we anticipated. But, yep, okay. There it is. As I was saying, without Golem, this build really doesn't have survivability, and that's one of the reasons that I don't recommend even trying it. The damage isn't the worst out there. I mean, but it's... I just can't recommend it. And you can see there why. You gotta be in close range, and you just get absolutely demolished in close range. And at least with the current gear that I have, there's nothing really that I can change out. I guess maybe losing Untamed Power, but that's still 50k damage every time I melee. That adds up. Volcanic Armor, if I can get rid of it. Golem would probably be the best thing to put there. So I would recommend Golem as your 10th mod. And then, honestly, I probably wouldn't die, especially since whenever I died there, I had my shield up. So the shield was proccing. I was just out of health whenever that happened. And if we can't get through it this time, we may go back and trade out something less important for that, although I anticipate we'll probably be able to get through it. I mean, as you can see here though, our melee damage is nothing to slouch at. 106k without any debuffs. If we apply the debuff and then we melee, we're doing still 100k. Yeah, So it's 100k, and then we get 22k ticks. I wait for my burn to come back up here. We'll test it out again. That was a melee. We did 216k there though, so that's for what it is. Good old Broodmother. We can check our armor real quick. So we are getting the rejuvenation bonus from the armor. So I think what it is with the Broodmother is she just hits us through, I think that's probably anomaly damage that she's doing. So right now we don't have that much resistance. So that's why we're taking so much damage. So anything that increases our resistance would also be a good third mod to pick up here. Maybe it doesn't have to be Golem. Maybe the mod that gives you armor resistance is just fine. Because you'll be running like 200k armor, that's a ton of physical mitigation. And you'll be peachy at that point. I don't think we'll really have any issues clearing any content here. We are healing to full, so all we really have to do is avoid the Broodmother's one shot, which just hit me as I said that, of course. But yeah, I guess we can go back to town and check on what mods we could potentially put there, because obviously this isn't working. This is not going to be a build that you want to solo with. This might work in group play. The damage isn't that bad, but it's not good. You'll definitely be out DPS'd by other builds doing this. So we can look and see if there's a way that we can make this solo viable, so we can at least get a clear time for this. But it's not looking hopeful. Not looking hopeful. Yeah, there's not any real mods that I can put in outside of maybe taking out Burnt Out. Yeah, we're gonna have to take out Burnt Out here, or I don't know. Getting rid of... Here, we will do something a little bit unconventional. We'll take out the... Ooh, I don't know. It's a tough call. Yeah, so we're gonna take out the helmet because while Burnout is a great passive for us to have here, since we don't have the Akari set, Fire Tsunami is not going to work for us. And so whenever you guys are doing your own builds, you might run into things like this where something's just not working, so you have to trade it out. So we're going to put on Anomaly's Visage, which is going to give us Anomaly Echo, and then since we already have Perseverance Shield on other gear, we can take away Perseverance Shield from the Anomaly's Visage, and we can put something else on. And for that, I do want to try out let's see, the taking damage against elites is probably something that's going to be really good there, but because that would give us 45% resistances, and we'll be doing that pretty much 100% uptime. But there's another mod, I mean that will be 100% uptime. There is another mod, if I can find it, that gives us just flat mitigation. Yeah. Sprinting increases our resistances by 50, but we will be sprinting a lot, but we're not always going to be sprinting. Oh, Seismic Impulse is not a bad one to pick up too, just because it's free damage, but it's also every 6 seconds, so it's not going to be that helpful. Let's see if we can't just find it in the mod list. I've got the mod list pulled up here. Resistance. It's gonna be not diffuse. Hopefully there's a tier 3 mod. So yeah, damage absorber. If you can get damage absorber, I think that's a great one to pick up. Do I have damage absorber? I don't think I do. I definitely have seen damage absorber, which makes me curious because I feel like I have it. But am I just missing it? I was almost positive I had damage absorber somewhere. I guess I don't. Can I buy it in the shop? I don't think it's in the shop. It's not on that, and it's not on that. So yeah, Circle of Power is probably going to be our best pickup there. So let's go ahead and put Circle of Power on the helmet. That'll give us 45% resistance, which should increase our mitigation by a ton, since we will have pretty much 100% uptime on Circle of Power. So yeah, hopefully now this will keep us from getting one shot because we're taking 45% less damage. We can't do that. We'll go ahead and do a Scorch Runs land against my better judgment. I might not finish it just because of the sheer amount of time this is going to take, and this is going to show, yeah, this is probably a good run because this is going to show why I can't recommend this build, because whenever you go against the flying bird things, it's just not fun. It's just not. You're better off literally going any other build unless you really just want to commit to it. And I mean, if you have friends too, it's a much better use of your time. But I don't see it being worthwhile, like, at all. I think he's dead. Something hit us there for a lot, which is very surprising. Oh, we don't even have our volcanic rounds up. That's nice. Let's go ahead and take a look at our mitigation real quick while we have everything running. So we have 164k armor, which is a ton of mitigation, and we also have 50% resistance, so we don't die unless I AFK in screen, and this build isn't as tanky as the golem build, so I actually take damage. And so yeah, you guys, whenever you're creating your own builds, you definitely need to think about your mitigation and stuff, especially in solo play. I can't stress that enough, and it, like, as I was making this build, like, I knew this was not going to work, just because of how, I mean, I'm not using my weapon because I want to have lava shots up, because I need the anomaly power bonus every time I melee rather than every time I just use a skill, and so I can't really time it out in the way that I can with other builds. So it's not as versatile, and I think honestly the problem is just if they want to have melee focused things in the game, I think either the base melee damage needs to be higher, or maybe scale melee with status powers. I don't even know how to make it better. Make the melee melee specific mod like 300% instead of 100%. Like, I can't even hit this guy. I'm literally gonna have to shoot him to do anything. I mean, whenever he's on the ground, we can do damage, but we just can't do damage at all when he's in the air. Now we're powerless. Yeah, the build's just rough. Like, here we go again. Another one. Now we don't have our anomaly power bonus, so we're going to be sitting around here. Just kind of, there we go, he lands, and we can scorch him, but we got to wait forever because we don't have any cooldown reduction in the kit, so that's why we don't want to ever like shoot our ammo. We want to always have 100% uptime on that lava rounds, or else it just kind of sucks. We do no damage! That's so bad. Yeah, so I'm only testing this to show if you guys like know a build's not gonna work, you really don't need to put it to the test. It's usually pretty obvious when that happens. Although if I was playing with like friends or something, then this might be a little bit more viable because I can pretty easily clear these pack mobs while somebody else focuses down the bird. But I mean, it really shouldn't come down to that. We do have a lot more survivability now. I noticed that I have pretty much 100% uptime on my 50% res, but we still do have moments where we take a lot of damage. We'll see here when the bird mother spawns if this build is going to be as tanky as it used to be, or if we just completely made another stinker. And obviously you can see just fighting those 3 mobs out there, we weren't really doing that hot. So you can imagine in all the fights we have with crawlers and the brood mother, we're just going to get absolutely devastated. I do believe that was the one shot we just got hit by, so if that is true, then we definitely are a lot here, which was the goal. Yeah, that was definitely the one shot we just got hit by. So we can survive the one shot now, which is good news for the build. You can run it in solo content, and it's possible to clear content. Would I recommend it? I've said this many times, but absolutely not. But you know, this is just part of the lessons that you learn whenever you're experimenting with your own builds. Sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it's not going to work. And this is one of the times where it definitely does not work. And so we're going to fight crawlers up here. Along with the brood mother, and that's really going to showcase where this just kind of falls apart. Maybe not. I think we'll heal enough that we can probably clear it, but it's not going to be a fast clear by any benchmark. I think I have mentioned that this probably will be my last Outriders video for now. with new Path of Exile League coming, I'm gonna be pretty invested into that. And I know they have announced that they will be adding some DLC to the game, which I'm very excited about. If you watched my review video, the last video I did, then you know that I'm not happy that they decided to forgo the games as a service model for the game. Although I do see some positive things in that there's just not like completely ridiculous things added into the game for the sake of making money. We obviously do not get seasonal content updates, and we're going to be reliant on the DLC to put out. And I mean, we'll see how fast they can do it and how much it costs. But I don't think, or my intuition is that it's not going to be like every 3 months content update guaranteed for the next like 5 years or so. I think we're going to be looking at very limited content updates, but we'll see. I could be pleasantly surprised by what they do with the game. I know I've been pleasantly surprised so far, so yeah, we're gonna die here. There's a 0% chance we survive this. I'm actually astounded that we're surviving this long. I mean, if they came and swiped at us at the same... Yep, okay. So yeah, that just kind of shows that the builds are rough. I mean, I could probably complete this if I really tried, but 9 minutes for Phase 2 of Scorchlands is not a respectable time at all. If I was on another build, we'd probably be through this either by now or by like 7 minutes, I think, is about how long it takes on the other build. So, for now, I'm just going to go ahead and say that melee builds on Pyromancer are currently not viable for any content. I mean, we did a fair amount of damage there, but you also have to consider that we would have had to do a lot more going into the future. So, having done 91 million damage there in 9 minutes, I think means absolutely nothing, because we weren't gonna clear it. That's just how it is. It wasn't gonna happen. But I mean, that's a lesson learned, and that's how your builds are gonna go. So, just to quickly recap, whenever you're creating your own builds, you want to find your source of damage, be it if you're doing weapon damage and maybe you're using a sniper rifle, you want to make sure like you're using long range damage or something. If you're using a shotgun, you want to be using close range damage. It's really up to you, but you want to make sure that you're scaling with the correct damage types. If you're using crit, you want to make sure you have mods that synergize with crit and stuff. And you want to make sure that you are surviving enough that you don't have to completely rely on your teammates to keep saving you, because you're not going to be doing any damage if you're dead. And you don't want to completely rely on, or if you're soloing content, then obviously you want to be able to clear solo content. Like other builds, for example, like my first Firestorm build, my second Firestorm build, or I guess the update to the first build, where you were doing more damage, are great builds because you can clear all the content solo and get pretty much gold and everything. I think even with the reduced timers on some of the missions, I think it would still be more than able to gold Kim Plant and Archways and Time Worn Spire and Stargrave and stuff with that build. So I would recommend pretty much any build over melee build, but in Outriders in the future, just keep in mind what you're scaling with and how to do it. I know if you're doing something like with Path of Exile, there's always path of building that you can get to plan out your builds, and having a in-depth tool like that is always very helpful. But if you can't do something like that, just putting it down in a spreadsheet and seeing where you can min-max at is always a helpful thing to do. And obviously here, these numbers aren't great. Melee's just not good in the game. But any other build that you're working on, you can plug it in and test it out and see how it does. There's nothing stopping you, especially if you already have the gear for what you're trying to do. You can try to plug it into the formulas. You can go out in the field and test it yourself and see what works for you and what doesn't. That's how I created the first build, and I encourage everybody to experiment. You don't always have to go with a build that you see off the forums. I know starting out and stuff, it is very good to do that. Whenever I first started Path of Exile, I pretty much used builds that other people made. But since then, for the past like 3 or 4 years that I've been playing, I pretty much use all my own builds. I pretty much never even look at a build guide anymore because I basically just follow this concepts that I look at where my damage source is going to be. I look at what my health pool is going to be like, what tools I have for survival to make sure that I don't die, and pretty much how much that compares against other builds in its type, and like maybe the other top racers and stuff, how that compares against them. In Outriders, obviously, it's not really that big of a race unless you're trying to get minimum times, but then you're going to be having to use probably meta builds. I'm going to assume if you're really racing for like the very, very top time on the leaderboard, there's going to be builds that in this game are specifically better than others for that. So you're going to have to look into what's performing well, and you're going to have some really in-depth speedrunning strats for that. But yeah, that's all I have for this video. As I said, in the future, this is probably my last Outriders video until they add some new stuff to the game. I've pretty much seen everything that there is in the game so far. Short of re-rolling to another class, which doesn't really interest me at this point. If there are racing features enabled in the game, then I might pick it back up. But until then, this is probably going to be the last piece of content that I do for Outriders. So hopefully you catch me in Path of Exile or some other things that I'm planning on doing with the channel. Subscribe, I guess, to be notified of what I do with that, and I'd appreciate some input. Also, let me know if there's any interest in having a Discord server. Even though I'm not playing Outriders, I may be able to help give some advice for builds there. I do still have a lot of free time right now, so I could do that, and obviously I'll be playing Path of Exile and stuff too as well, and I'll be streaming more when I'm playing Path of Exile, so you can catch me at my stream at twitch.tv/xbod. And on that note, I may be switching to other streaming platforms too. I'm not really a huge fan of Twitch since they did their ad rework. I think that really kind of screws over small content creators because I'll be honest, I don't want to sit through 45 seconds of ads just to watch some of my friends. So, yeah, as a small content creator, it's kind of frustrating to deal with the ads. So I'm thinking something maybe like YouTube or something might be a little bit more in line with what I'm looking for. But we'll see. Until then, that's all I have for you.